Now to a move taken yesterday by Howard University that poses a big cause for concern for our next guest. The university announced it is shutting down its classical studies department as part of, quote, prioritization efforts. It is currently the only historically black college or university with such a department. In response, Harvard University's Cornel West and author and educator Jeremy Tate co-wrote an opinion piece for the Washington Post entitled, Howard University's Removal of Classics is a Spiritual Catastrophe. Quote, academia's continual campaign to disregard or neglect the classics is a sign of spiritual decay, moral decline, and a deep intellectual narrowness running amok in American culture. Those who commit this terrible act treat Western civilization as either irrelevant and not worthy of prioritization, or as harmful and worthy only of condemnation. To end this spiritual catastrophe, we must restore true education, mobilizing all of the intellectual and moral resources we can to create human beings of courage, vision, and civic virtue. This classical approach is united to the black experience. It recognizes that the end and aim of education is really the anthem of black people, which is to lift every voice. That means to find your voice, not an echo or an imitation of others, but you can't find your voice without being grounded in tradition, grounded in legacies, grounded in heritages. Engaging with the classics and with our civilizational heritage is the means to finding our true voice. It is how we become our full selves, spiritually free and morally great. And Jeremy Tate joins us now, along with Professor at Princeton University, Eddie Glaude Jr. Thank you both for being with us this morning.
Jeremy, this is actually something Eddie and I have been talking about for some time, how you balance the best of things and also the most damaging of legacies. I'm curious, have you and Cornel West been talking about this issue for some time?
You know, this all started, we had Dr. West on our podcast, the Anchor podcast, and it really stirred up a conversation that people who may not see eye to eye politically see a ton of value to this tradition. And there is an attack right now against this tradition, schools canceling classics like the Odyssey. And what was really amazing to me is the way students at Howard University, when word broke that the classics department was going to be eliminated, they rallied on Twitter and other social platforms to make sure that this wouldn't happen.
And there's a line here, students must be challenged. Can they confront the fact that human existence is not easily divided into good and evil, but filled with complexity, nuance, and ambiguity? Talk about that and how that question doesn't just hang over Howard University, but hangs over all American universities.
You know, there's a crisis right now, Joe, I believe, in mainstream American education. The last couple of years, I was a teacher in a public school. I would ask students on the first day of class, like, why are we here? What's the point? And they would say almost in unison, to get a better job. And this is just kind of bland utilitarianism, which has taken over mainstream American education. I would write on the board then what Plato said, that the object of education is actually to teach us to love what is beautiful. That whole concept is foreign to most students going through our K-12 system. It's all about credentialing. It's all about college and career readiness. It's all about getting a better job. We have lost the heart and soul of education, which is fundamentally about what it means to be human.
Our friend Cornel West couldn't be on today, but Eddie Glaude, who is a dear friend of Cornel's, is on. This would, Eddie, this op-ed would likely surprise some readers of the Washington Post, seeing Cornel West writing this. I take it doesn't surprise you.
Not at all. Not at all. I mean, there's a sense in which Cornel West, I don't want to speak for my dear friend, Joe, is deeply committed to the depth and power of traditions. He reads his T.S. Eliot. He knows his Matthew Arnold. He understands, as he invoked, I could hear his language in the op-ed, as he invoked the philosopher Hans Gadamer about the importance of tradition shaping us, right? And this is a sense in which he wants to emphasize, Joe, this notion of education as Bildung, as character formation. This is an echo of Du Bois's response to Booker T. Washington and his insistence on vocational education and for black folk, and Du Bois saying, no, we need to educate the fullness of who we are so that we can imagine ourselves in the most expansive of terms. But I see a tension in the op-ed that I read it over and over again. Jeremy, can I ask you this question? And the tension is this. As the former president of the American Academy of Religion, I've seen the closure of religion departments. As the chair of African American Studies, I've seen the defunding of African American Studies departments, women's studies departments, Latino studies departments, and the like. What we see is this prioritization has everything to do with, to my mind, an all-out assault on the humanities. What is it about this language of the classics and Western civilization that attracts your attention and Dr. West's attention? Because it may very well be that classics is just simply a part of this assault on the humanities, if that makes sense.
Yeah, the time I spent in teachers' rooms during lunch debating curriculum and what books we should be putting in front of our students, I think maybe the well-intentioned aim for multicultural curriculum has ended up that students don't get much of any tradition at all. I think it's been such a concern to not offend students in any way by pushing maybe Western European cultures over others. And so, and this is why I launched the CLT as an alternative to the SAT and ACT. College Board is really the main player and driver in American education right now. But there's no substance. There's no soul. This older, richer version of education that was all about passing down the best of what has been thought and said has been almost entirely lost. There's no substance or soul to it anymore. So I believe, and I think Dr. West has been a great megaphone for saying, we can't cancel the classics. We can't cancel Homer and the Odyssey. These texts that have been fundamental to shaping some of the best ideas in Western civilization.
Eddie, let's bring it up a couple of hundred years from Homer and from Socrates and talk a little bit about To Kill a Mockingbird and The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, books that have been pulled out of schools in many cases because of the language. And the argument is that it makes students uncomfortable. And I'm sympathetic to that. My daughter is right in the wheelhouse of all those books, and there are words in there that frankly do make a lot of her classmates uncomfortable. So how do we handle that? How do we grapple with that, where there are words in the books that were written 150 years ago that do make us uncomfortable in 2021, but the story at the core of those books is something that's worth reading?
Yeah, I mean, we have to understand that. I mean, we have to confront the complexity of human beings, of the human journey. It makes no sense to redact the N-word out of Twain. That would be silly to me. It makes no sense to kind of try to bury the reality of who we are. Joe and I, and Willie, you and I have been talking about this and Mika, we've been talking about this for a while. We have to deal with the complexity of who we are. We can't hide our ugliness. We have to confront it. We have to confront it honestly. And to do so doesn't mean that we have to lift up some idealized version of Western civilization. I know it was in your subtitle of Saving Freedom, Joe, but oftentimes Western civilization has been a euphemism for white civilization. So we have to be clear. But we have to confront who we are. And that doesn't mean sticking your head in the sand when we confront some of the ugliness of what we've done. In fact, that ugliness will open up imagining ourselves differently, if that makes sense, Joe. Willie.
Yeah, I mean, Western civilization in the past has been defined by white civilization, but one of the things that I love about this op-ed is it explains it is expansive. We're all a part of it, and you know what I also, Eddie, something that we've been talking about for years now, looking at the founding fathers, looking at Washington, looking at Jefferson, looking at Madison, looking at these people who were slave owners, who did things abhorrent by today's standards. I would say abhorrent by any day's standards. You try to figure out how to balance that with where we are today, and you realize that King, what did King do? He used the words of Thomas Jefferson, just like Frederick Douglass used the words of Thomas Jefferson. And more people have used the words of Thomas Jefferson as both a sword and as a shield for freedom. And those words probably liberated more people globally than any other words ever produced in any political document. And yet, he was a slave owner. He wrote abhorrent things in his life. He did abhorrent things in his life. And the challenge is, how do we use those words? How do we use those ideas, like Martin Luther King did in his letter from Birmingham jail, to liberate even more people?
You know, Joe, how do we come to possess our inheritance as our own? Not to have it stuffed down our throats, but to assess it, to understand it and possess it as mine. How do I possess Walt Whitman? How democratic vistas, even though Whitman thought I didn't have the capacity to be a citizen? How do I understand his insight, even as well as his failures, right? How do we take possession of our inheritance as our own? And just be clear, you can't read Toni Morrison, a graduate, by the way, of the classics department of Howard University, without understanding how important the classics were to her literary imagination. People arguing whether or not this was Euripides' Medea or Sophocles' conflict in Beloved, right? There's a sense in which you can't read Derek Walcott's poetry unless you understand the way in which he's reading Homer and the Iliad and the Odyssey.
Hey, thanks so much for watching our YouTube channel. You can follow up on today's top stories and breaking news, or catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.